Paradox wars, the clash of infinite worlds, the shattering of reality. The year was 3087. On a secret research station orbiting Jupiter, the brightest minds of humanity gathered around a single machine, the Paradox Engine. It was the greatest invention mankind had ever built, a device that could rewrite history itself. For centuries, humans had studied time, searching for a way to control it, but true power over history had always remained a fantasy. Until now, Dr. Elias Carter, the lead scientist, stood before the glowing machine, his hands shaking with both excitement and fear. His team had worked for decades to reach this moment. "This will change everything," Carter whispered. Around him, engineers, physicists, and data analysts monitored thousands of screens. The room buzzed with energy as the final sequence was initiated. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Activate. The Paradox Engine hummed to life. A pulse of blue energy rippled outward, unseen by the human eye, but felt in every atom of existence. At first, nothing seemed different. Then, reality shattered. A universe torn apart. Time did not break all at once. It began as a flicker, a strange distortion in the air, like heat rising from pavement. Then the distortions grew. The walls of the research station rippled. The scientists blinked, suddenly finding themselves in different positions than before. Dr. Carter gasped. He had been standing near the control panel. Now he was across the room. His mind reeled. Had he moved? Had time moved him? Alarms blared. On the giant observation screen, Jupiter itself twisted like a mirage, shifting between different versions of itself. One moment a gas giant, the next a rocky planet, then an Earth-like world with oceans and greenery. The crew watched in horror as the impossible unfolded before them. "This isn't just altering the past," whispered Dr. Mira Voss, a quantum physicist. "This is collapsing every possible timeline into one." Reality was no longer stable. Past, present, and future overlapped chaotically. The Paradox Lords arrive. Across the cosmos, something ancient stirred. In the deepest reaches of the multiverse, beyond the edge of time itself, the Paradox Lords opened their unseen eyes. They were not creatures, nor were they gods. They were guardians of reality, beings older than time, existing beyond space itself. For eons, they had watched over the flow of existence, ensuring that no civilization ever gained true control over time. Whenever a species reached the point of manipulating reality, the Paradox Lords intervened, wiping them from existence before they could do irreparable harm. Now, for the first time in a million years, a new threat had emerged: humanity. "The mortals have breached the boundaries," one of the Paradox Lords whispered, its voice stretching across eternity. "They must be erased," another answered. And so the decree was made. Humanity would cease to exist. The first wave erasure. Back on the research station, chaos spread like wildfire. Scientists screamed as objects flickered in and out of reality. Walls changed colors, machines aged and de-aged in seconds, and people found themselves caught between moments. Then the erasure began. It started with a small mining colony on Mars. One moment, it was there, a thriving outpost with thousands of workers. The next, it was gone, not destroyed. Gone, as if it had never existed. Then, entire starships vanished from existence. The city of Neo-London, built on the ruins of the old world, simply blinked out, erased from history. Families disappeared. Friends were forgotten. Memories dissolved like mist. On Earth, governments panicked. World leaders sent desperate messages across the void, trying to understand what was happening. But no answer came, only silence. A message from nowhere. As the research station crumbled under the weight of shifting time, Dr. Carter saw something impossible. A message appeared on the main screen, glowing in strange, golden symbols. It was written in a language Carter had never seen before, yet somehow he understood every word. "Do not surrender. You have already won. You just need to remember how." A chill ran down his spine. The words pulsed as if they were alive. The message was not from the past. It was not from the present. It was from the future. Somewhere, sometime, humanity had already fought this war. and won. But how? The station shuddered, lights flickered, the paradox engine pulsed again, sending out another ripple of energy. The paradox was growing, spreading. More colonies, more cities, more people were being erased. Dr. Carter clenched his fists. If humanity was going to survive, they needed to act fast. They needed to understand the paradox engine. They needed to fight back. Somehow, the war begins. Far beyond human understanding, the paradox lords prepared their next move. They would not simply erase humanity. They would rewrite reality so that humans had never existed in the first place. But something unexpected had happened. The message from the future should not have existed. Somewhere, something had changed. The paradox lords hesitated, only for a moment. But in a war where time itself was a weapon, a moment was all humanity needed. The battle for existence had begun. The paradox resistance. A strange message echoed through the hidden chambers of the Eco-Nexus, the last refuge of humanity. Do not surrender. We have already won. You just need to remember how. The words repeated on every screen, transmitted on every frequency. It had no source, no sender, yet it came from the future. Commander Orion Vale stood in front of the main console, his eyes fixed on the glowing words. Around him, a small group of scientists and soldiers waited for his response. "What do you think it means?" asked Dr. Evelyn Hart, one of the lead scientists working on the paradox engine. Orion clenched his jaw. "It means there's hope. It means we did something right. We just need to figure out what." The Eco-Nexus was a hidden base outside time, a temporal pocket where the last survivors of humanity had gathered. The paradox lords had erased billions from existence, rewriting history at will. But here, in this sanctuary, remnants of the lost past still survived. As Orion looked around, he saw engineers struggling to stabilize the paradox engine. If it worked, it could allow them to fight back against the enemy, maybe even restore the erased, but it was unstable. Every test run ended in failure. "Commander," called a soldier, running into the room. "We've located another erased zone. A team is ready to deploy." Orion nodded. "Go, bring them back, and be careful." A strike team of time-traveling commandos, known as the Temporal Phantoms, geared up. Their mission: rescue those who had been erased before they were lost forever. They stepped into the time gate, and with a flash of light, they vanished into history. The Temporal Phantoms emerged in a war-torn version of Earth's past. Skyscrapers were frozen in time, their glass shattered but never falling. The sky was a swirling mix of colors, broken by rifts in time itself. "Stay alert," whispered Captain Darius Cole, the team leader. "Something's wrong." As they moved through the silent streets, they found ghostly figures, people trapped between existence and nothingness. These were the erased, flickering in and out of reality. The phantoms activated their stabilizers, pulling the lost souls back into time. But before they could finish, a wave of energy swept through the streets. The air grew cold. A figure appeared, a paradox lord. This one was different. Its armor shifted between centuries, flickering between Roman, medieval, and futuristic designs. But its eyes glowed with something unnatural. "Fools," the paradox lord said. "You fight against time itself. You cannot win." Captain Cole raised his weapon. "We've already won. You just don't remember yet." The battle was fierce. The phantoms moved through time mid-fight, dodging attacks by shifting seconds ahead. But something was wrong. The paradox lord was stronger, faster, and more precise than any they had faced before. Then they saw it. A shadow behind the paradox lord. A presence. Something else was pulling the strings. The lord's actions were not its own. Something is controlling them. Cole shouted into his communicator. "Commander, we're not just fighting the paradox lords. Something is manipulating them." Back at the Eco-Nexus, Orion heard the message and felt a chill run down his spine. The enemy they had been fighting was not the true enemy. Something far worse was waiting in the dark. The first paradox battle. The sky tore open with a sound like shattered glass. From the rift came the Chrono Reapers, towering biomechanical horrors with shifting metallic bodies. Their eyes glowed with a sickly blue light, and their razor-sharp limbs cut through reality itself. Wherever they moved, history unraveled. Cities disappeared, replaced by ruins. People turned to dust as if they had never been born. On the battlefield, humanity fought desperately. Soldiers fired energy rifles, tanks unleashed plasma rounds, and aircraft bombarded the Reapers with high-intensity lasers. But nothing worked. The Reapers were not bound by time. They dodged bullets before they were even fired. They erased soldiers from the past, making them vanish from existence. General Eric stood at the command center, watching in horror as entire squads vanished from his war map. He turned to his chief strategist, Dr. Elaine Carter. "We can't fight them in normal time. We need something different." Dr. Carter nodded. "We use temporal ghosting. We trick them with illusions from different points in time." The order went out. Within seconds, human soldiers split into multiple versions of themselves, past, present, and future copies. To the Chrono Reapers, it was chaos. Every time they struck, they hit only a ghost. The battlefield became a maze of shifting figures, each one an echo of time itself. The Paradox Lords, watching from the other side of the rift, grew impatient. One of them, a hooded figure with eyes like swirling galaxies, turned to his brothers. "Humanity is more dangerous than we thought. Then let us erase them from before they were strong," another hissed. The plan was simple: strike humanity where it was weakest minus 10,000 years in the past. If the early human civilizations crumbled, there would be no future war. The Chrono Reapers began shifting their focus, disappearing into time portals that led to the distant past. But humanity was ready. A specially trained strike team, led by Captain Orion Vale, had already traveled back in time. They arrived on an ancient battlefield where two warring human tribes fought. This was a crucial moment in history. If the wrong side won, humanity would never rise to power. Orion and his team blended in, their advanced armor hidden beneath primitive clothing. They studied the battle and realized the problem. The losing tribe was humanity's true ancestors. If they fell, history would change forever. "We need to turn this around," Orion whispered. "We can't let them lose." The team moved quickly. They sabotaged enemy weapons, whispered strategies to the right leaders, and even disguised themselves as warriors to fight alongside their ancestors. The battle shifted. History rewrote itself. The right tribe won. But then something strange happened. A pulse of energy exploded from the battlefield, a shockwave rippling across time itself. The Chrono Reapers screamed and vanished. The Paradox Lords recoiled in fear. And then, something new emerged. In the heart of the past, a figure appeared. It was neither human nor machine. It was wrapped in golden light, its face hidden behind a smooth mask. Time bent around it, obeying its will. Even the Paradox Lords did not know what it was. The entity raised its hand, and history trembled. The war had changed, but so had the future. Humanity had unleashed something beyond even the masters of time. Orion's team watched in stunned silence. "What have we done?" One soldier whispered. The golden figure turned to them, as if hearing their words through time itself. And then, with a flicker of light, it vanished, into the future, into the unknown. The war was far from over. The arrival of the Forgotten Empire. The sky above Earth cracked like shattered glass, revealing a colossal fleet emerging from the void of time. Their ships were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Massive, dark, and humming with a strange energy. These were not the Paradox Lords. They were something else, something ancient. In the war room of the UEF Dreadnought Titan's Wrath, Orion Vale and his top commanders watched the live feed in stunned silence. The ships carried the markings of a long-lost civilization. One whispered about in forbidden records, the Forgotten Empire. A deep, commanding voice echoed through the communication channels. "I am Emperor Zephyron of the Forgotten Empire. We have returned." Orion stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You fought the Paradox Lords before, and lost. Why return now?" Zephyron's holographic form flickered to life before them. A towering figure clad in dark silver armor, his face hidden behind a horned mask. His glowing eyes burned with intensity. "Because you altered time. You disturbed the balance. And in doing so, you freed us." The room tensed. Orion exchanged glances with Admiral Carson, who whispered, "This could be bad." Zephyron continued, his voice cold and absolute. "The Paradox Lords are a plague. We fought them once, but we were doomed to fail. Now history has shifted. You are the anomaly, and anomalies must be dealt with." Orion narrowed his eyes. "What are you saying?" Zephyrin stepped closer in the projection, his presence suffocating. "I offer you a choice. Join us, fight with us, and destroy the Paradox Lords forever, or refuse, and we will eliminate you. You may be an anomaly, but you are also a threat." The room erupted into murmurs. Orion took a deep breath. "You threaten us, yet you want our help." Zephyrin tilted his head. "I offer power. We will show you how to defeat the Paradox Lords. But make no mistake, if you do not stand with us, you stand against us." The weight of the decision pressed down on Orion. The Forgotten Empire was powerful, but ruthless. If humanity allied with them, they could win the war, but at what cost? Orion turned to his officers. "We need time to decide." Zephyrin's glowing eyes narrowed. "You have one cycle. Then I will have my answer." His image flickered and vanished. The war room remained silent. Then Carson sighed. "Damn it. We just got out of one impossible war, and now we might be in another." Orion ran a hand through his hair. "If we refuse, we fight on two fronts. If we accept, we might be walking into a trap." A young officer, Lieutenant Hayes, hesitated before speaking. "Sir, what if they betray us after we win?" Orion nodded. "That's the problem. They don't see us as equals. They see us as a tool. The moment we are no longer useful, we become a target." As the team debated their next move, a new alert blared across the ship. The Paradox Lords had just activated something terrifying. A deep, resonating pulse rippled across the battlefield. On the main screen, data streams went wild. Then, a single horrifying message appeared. Humanity, deletion in pyrojuresis. Orion's blood ran cold. The Paradox Lords weren't just trying to destroy humanity. They were trying to erase its very existence from time itself. The war of infinite versions. The sky cracked open like shattered glass. A massive energy surge rippled through the battlefield as the multiversal convergence activated. Orion Vale stood at the center, gripping his rifle, his heart pounding. He had no idea if this would work, but it was their last hope. Bright portals swirled in the air. One by one, warriors stepped through, but they were all Orion Vale. Thousands of them, each one different. Some wore high-tech armor, others dressed in ragged battle gear. Some had cybernetic limbs, while others carried weapons never seen before. They were all versions of him, Orion Vale, from different timelines, different possibilities. One Orion had a glowing mechanical arm. Another had scars across his face, his eyes filled with the pain of 1,000 battles. One wore the uniform of a general, and another had a suit that shimmered like liquid metal. They exchanged glances, and without hesitation, they all turned to face their common enemy, the Paradox Lords. The sky above twisted into a vortex of collapsing realities. The Paradox Lords, floating figures of pure energy and shadow, raised their hands. The battlefield shifted. Mountains disappeared. The ground turned into liquid, then solid again. Gravity reversed, then snapped back. Time sped up in one area and slowed in another. Soldiers screamed as they fell into voids of nothingness. Orion knew they couldn't fight like this. The battlefield was changing every second. He turned to his alternate selves. "We need to adapt." One Orion, wearing sleek silver armor, nodded. "We can't win if the ground keeps shifting beneath us." Another Orion, older and with a robotic eye, stepped forward. "Then we must anchor ourselves to reality. We need a fixed point." A third Orion, with glowing tattoos across his arms, slammed his fists together. "I can generate a stabilization field, but I need time." Orion raised his rifle. "Then let's buy you some." The army of Orions charged forward, each one using their unique skills. Some wielded energy weapons, others fought with blades made of compressed time. Some moved so fast they blurred through space, while others controlled gravitational forces, bending the battlefield to their will. The Paradox Lords countered with a devastating attack. They pulled entire timelines into existence, alternate versions of Earth where humanity had already lost. Ruined cities materialized around them, filled with broken machines and the corpses of fallen soldiers. The Orions fought through the wreckage, pushing forward against impossible odds. One Orion, wearing a dark cloak, shouted, "This is where I died in my timeline. We have to move." Another Orion, covered in burns, growled, "Not this time." He fired a pulse rifle, obliterating a Paradox Lord's energy form. But the enemy reformed instantly, shifting into another version of itself. The battle raged on. Every time they gained ground, the Paradox Lords changed reality again. The Orions fought against gravity shifts, time loops, and even their own memories being rewritten. The struggle seemed endless. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. A new portal opened. A figure stepped through. He was Orion Vale, but older, battle-worn, and standing with a presence that made even the Paradox Lords hesitate. His armor was sleek, black, and lined with golden energy. His eyes burned with knowledge that the others lacked. The Orions turned to him. "Who are you?" The future Orion smirked. "I'm the one who's already won this war. The betrayal of time itself." The Paradox engine shuddered violently, its core pulsing with unstable energy. It had been humanity's greatest weapon, a machine capable of bending time itself. But something had gone wrong. The timelines were no longer obeying human commands. Instead, they twisted and fractured, creating echoes of events that had never happened and shadows of futures that should not exist. Commander Elias Voss watched in horror from the control deck of the Chrono Citadel. His crew frantically worked the consoles, trying to regain control. The Paradox Lords, their enemies until moments ago, stood frozen, their golden armor reflecting the wild flashes of unstable time energy. "This isn't us," Voss whispered. "Something else is in control." A ripple of distortion passed through the command center. The air itself seemed to tear, revealing glimpses of alternate realities, some where humanity had won, others where they had been wiped from existence. And in the center of it all, a shape began to form. Not a being of flesh and bone, but of pure anomaly. It had no true shape, only a shifting mass of impossible angles and flickering light. It spoke without sound, a voice that bypassed the ears and echoed directly into the minds of those present. "You were never the true war. You were only the feast." A cold realization settled over the humans and the Paradox Lords alike. The war had never been about control over time. It had never been about the Paradox Lords' dominance or humanity's survival. They were pawns in a greater game, one orchestrated by an entity that existed beyond time itself. The Echo Entity. Voss's hands tightened into fists. "What are you?" he demanded. The Echo Entity flickered, shifting between different forms, sometimes a massive celestial eye, sometimes a swirling storm of fractured realities. It was neither alive nor dead, neither past nor future. "I am hunger. I am the echo of choices never made. The war between you and the Paradox Lords has fed me well. Every paradox, every altered timeline, every contradiction strengthens me. And now, I am strong enough to consume all of existence." One of the Paradox Lords, a towering figure clad in silver and blue, stepped forward. His voice was strained, as if he had known of this horror, but had ignored its warnings. "This war was never meant to be fought," he admitted. "We believed we were protecting the balance of time, but we were only opening the door for you." The Echo Entity pulsed, its presence warping reality itself. "You understand too late. You all belong to me now." The walls of the Chrono Citadel melted away, revealing an endless void where time collapsed upon itself. Planets appeared and vanished in an instant. Battles that had taken place centuries ago replayed in moments before being erased. History unraveled, and the future was devoured before it could even begin. Voss turned to his crew. "We're not done yet." One of his officers, a young woman named Talia Grayson, managed to stabilize part of the console. "Sir, the Paradox engine is still functional. If we can isolate its core, we might be able to cut the Echo Entity off from the timeline." The Paradox Lord nodded. "But if we fail, we could make it even stronger." Voss exhaled sharply. There was no choice. They had to try. The battle was no longer against the Paradox Lords. It was against time itself. The fractured timeline gambit. Orion Vale stood inside the war room, surrounded by the best minds of humanity. The holographic projection above them flickered, a swirling vortex of tangled timelines, shifting realities, and echoes of events that had never happened. The echo entity was tightening its grip. Time was collapsing. "We're out of options," said Dr. Ilara Kane, the lead scientist of the Temporal Division. "We have one last move. We break time itself." Silence filled the room. Even the hardened war commanders looked uneasy. Breaking time wasn't a strategy. It was suicide. "How?" Orion asked. Ilara took a deep breath. "A controlled fracture. If we shatter the timeline into infinite pieces, the echo entity won't be able to manipulate a single stable reality. It will lose its control." "And what happens to us?" asked Captain Idris, his voice grim. Ilara hesitated. "We may not survive. We may become fragments ourselves, lost in a storm of shifting realities. But if we do nothing, the echo entity will consume everything." Orion nodded. He had faced impossible odds before. "Then we go in." The mission was set. A team of time divers, including Orion, Ilara, Idris, and a few elite operatives, would infiltrate the echo entity's core and deploy the chronobomb. It would send a shockwave through time, fracturing reality into infinite pieces. The risks were beyond calculation, but humanity had no choice. The time divers stood at the edge of the quantum rift, a spiraling vortex of unstable time energy. Their suits shimmered, adjusting to the ever-changing flow of time. "Once we enter," Ilara said, "we can't turn back." Orion stepped forward. "Then let's move." They jumped. The world twisted around them. Time fractured and reassembled in flickering snapshots. Orion saw flashes of himself in different realities, some older, some younger, some dead. Then they hit the core. It was a swirling mass of shifting paradoxes. Buildings floated in the air, oceans ran backward, and people existed in multiple states at once. The echo entity was here. A voice echoed through the chaos. "You are too late." Orion turned, weapon raised. A towering figure emerged from the distortions. It had no single form. Its body flickered between thousands of human faces, shifting from young to old, male to female, hero to villain. Ilara's breath caught. "No, it's us." The echo entity was not an alien force. It was humanity's future, broken, distorted, lost in infinite time loops. "We are the echoes of every mistake," the entity whispered. "We are what you will become." Orion's mind raced. If this thing was a future version of humanity, then destroying it meant erasing their own potential future. But if they did nothing, the entity would consume the present. "We don't have to fight," Orion shouted. "We can break the cycle." The entity's form trembled. For a moment, it seemed uncertain. But then, it surged forward, reality warping around it. "Deploy the bomb," Orion yelled. Ilara activated the chronobomb. The device pulsed, sending waves of energy through the fractured space. Cracks formed in reality, splitting into infinite shards. The echo entity screamed as time shattered. Orion felt himself being pulled apart. The world twisted. Time collapsed. And then, darkness. The final choice: rewrite or oblivion? Orion Vale stood at the center of time itself, staring at the swirling mass of light and shadow before him. The echo entity. It pulsed like a living storm, a presence beyond comprehension. "This is us," the entity's voice echoed in his mind. "Humanity's future. A destiny too powerful, too unstoppable. The Paradox Lords feared what we would become. So they cast us out, erased us from existence." Orion's mind reeled. This was the truth. The echo entity wasn't an enemy. It was the future of mankind, fighting to exist. But if it succeeded, history itself would change. Every war, every sacrifice, every moment of struggle, gone. "You have a choice," the echo entity said. "Destroy us, and humanity's future is lost forever. Merge with us, and we reclaim our destiny. But there will be no turning back. You will become something beyond human." Orion clenched his fists. Behind him, the Paradox Lords floated above the shattered remains of time. Their faceless forms radiated power, their voices like distant thunder. The balance must be restored, one of them declared. If the echo survives, time will collapse. This is the last warning. Orion Vale, make your choice. His team, Commander Wren, Dr. Leora, and Captain Vex, stood in tense silence. We can't let them erase us, Wren whispered. We have fought too hard for our place in the universe. But what if merging turns us into something we can't control? Leora argued. Will we still be human? Vex looked at Orion. You decide. Vale, whatever you choose, we stand with you. Orion's heart pounded. Destroy the echo, or merge with it. Lose the future, or lose themselves. The Paradox Lords raised their hands. Energy gathered. Choose now, or we choose for you. Orion took a deep breath. Time itself trembled as Orion stepped forward. His decision had to be made now. I won't let humanity be erased, he said. We deserve our future. The Paradox Lords unleashed a wave of annihilation. Orion barely had time to react. He reached out, and the echo entity surged into him. A storm of memories flooded his mind. A million futures, a million versions of himself, all merging into one. He saw a timeline where humans became gods of time, another where they ruled the stars forever, another where they became monsters. Pain ripped through his body. His teammates cried out, but their voices faded. Time fractured. Then, silence. Orion opened his eyes. He was no longer just Orion Vale. He was something greater. He was the echo. The past, present, and future existed within him now. The Paradox Lords hesitated. For the first time, they seemed afraid. You should not exist, one of them whispered. Orion raised a hand. Time bent to his will. He saw every possible outcome, every war, every fall, every rise. A single thought decided the fate of everything. He rewrote the rules. The Paradox Lords screamed as reality itself reshaped. The multiversal purge collapsed upon itself. Time bent, twisted, and then settled. Orion stood in a universe reborn. His team was there, unchanged, yet different. The war was over. Humanity still existed, but Orion was no longer one of them. You did it, Wren said. Orion smiled faintly. I hope so. As he faded into the currents of time, his last words echoed. The future is ours now. The paradox reset. The battlefield was no longer a battlefield. It was something else now, a swirling void of shifting colors, collapsing stars, and echoes of forgotten realities. Orion Vale stood in the center, his form flickering between human and something beyond understanding. His team was beside him, their bodies infused with the power of the echo entity. They were no longer just humans. They were something more, something new. The Paradox Lords floated above them, their once perfect forms distorted, their shifting masks cracking. For the first time in eternity, they felt something alien to them. Fear. Orion reached out, not with his hands, but with his mind. The echo entity responded, its endless hunger twisting, reshaping into something else. It was no longer a force of destruction, no longer a mindless devourer of realities. It had been rewritten, its very purpose changed. Now, it was a guardian, a protector of existence itself. The Paradox Lords roared in defiance. They unleashed their final attack, a storm of collapsing timelines, paradox blades that could erase even the strongest beings. But Orion and his team no longer played by the rules of reality. They had become something greater. With a single thought, Orion shattered the incoming storm. The paradox energy dissolved like mist in the wind. The Lords fell back, their power draining, their forms fading. Their reign was over. The very thing they had feared most had come true. Humanity had ascended beyond their control. The multiverse trembled, then stabilized. No longer was it a chaotic battlefield of colliding possibilities. Time and space settled, the fractures healing. The echoes of destroyed realities reformed, not as broken shadows, but as something whole. Orion turned to his team. They were no longer soldiers, no longer rebels fighting an impossible war. They were the new architects of existence, the new guardians of reality. A silent understanding passed between them. They had won, but this was not just a victory. It was a transformation. Orion took one last look at the universe he had fought so hard to protect. Then, his body dissolved into light. He was everywhere now, an omnipresent force watching over all of creation. He was no longer just Orion Vale. He was something else, something eternal. His final words echoed across all of existence. You are free now. Choose your own fate. The war that never was. The universe stood still. One moment, war had consumed existence itself, an endless battle across infinite timelines. The next, there was only silence. No explosions, no screams, no collapsing realities. Just silence. Humanity's greatest war had never happened. The paradox engine had erased it from time, rewriting history so that the conflict never existed. But some still remembered. Scattered across the cosmos, a handful of individuals carried fragments of memories, flickering images of battles fought in places that no longer existed. Among them was Captain Elias Voss. He stood aboard the U.S. Valor, staring at the blackness of space. His crew continued their routines, unaware of the war that had shaped them. To them, the past was normal. But Elias knew the truth. He could feel it, like a shadow at the edge of his mind. A war had been fought, and yet it had never happened. Voss turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Kara Rain. "Do you feel it?" he asked. She frowned. "Feel what, sir?" "Something's missing, like a gap in time." She hesitated. Then, as if pulled by an unseen force, she whispered, I see flashes. A war, a battle across time. But it doesn't make sense. There's no record of it." Voss nodded. "We fought a war that never was, and yet, somehow, we remember." Across the universe, others felt it too. A scientist on Titan, staring at his equations, found errors that should not exist. A historian on Earth, researching ancient conflicts, discovered inconsistencies in time. The lone traveler on the edge of a forgotten galaxy heard whispers in a language that had been erased. The paradox engine had done its job. The war was gone. Humanity was free. But was it truly over? As Voss and Rain tried to make sense of their memories, the ship's console flickered. A message appeared. "The true war is yet to come. Prepare for the final paradox." The words burned into the screen, defying all logic. They had come from nowhere, from no time, from no sender. Voss felt a cold chill crawl up his spine. "What does it mean?" he asked. Rain looked at him, her face pale. "It means we didn't end the war. We just delayed it." Far beyond human reach, deep in the fabric of time itself, something stirred. Something ancient, something watching, and it was waiting.